Hello everyone, if anyone's watching, this is our second hashtag social agency hangout, and we're talking about how to tell your story as a recruitment agency online and maybe offline. And I've got Bill Boorman here, I've got Andy Hedworth here, I've got Robin here who's watching but not talking. So if anyone has any comments, please feel free to sort of tweet me at colleagueRS or use the hashtag, which is hashtag social agency. And we've got a community now on Google Plus, just hashtag social agency again. And I don't know if that topic will come up tonight. Google Plus communities, they've just been launched, and you can comment on there as well, or on a Facebook page. So and I'll pass the comments on. And also, if you're able to join, you're welcome to. It's still a bit of a test run at the moment. Can I ask Andy and Bill to introduce themselves? So if we start with Andy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Andy Hedworth. My background is recruitment, and have spent the last, like the rest of us, really, pretty much early adopters and be around the whole social recruiting space now for 4 or 5 years. I work with recruiters and corporates, helping them with their getting started in social, really. And I've been doing the active content piece myself, blogging now for 6 years this March, as well as all the other social channels. So, and this is my first official hangout, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, welcome.
Well, it's only my second, so. Bill?
Yeah, I'm Bill Boorman. Hopefully I don't need too much introduction. I run True Events, and I work with recruitment business. I've known Andy for a few years now, and it was Andy who started me blogging, which is why I really wanted him to join the Friends. I don't have as nice a shed as Andy has, obviously. So
shed.
It looks like
it's a log cabin.
Yeah, this is Andy Hedworth coming to you from my shed, my log shed. So Andy got me started on the blog, on my blog about 3 years ago, and we obviously exchange a lot and sometimes cross over on comments. So I'm really glad Andy's here. And Robin's looking in. Robin's a regular blogger and member of the Human Resources Blogger Network with me, HRBN, shout out for them. So that's me, and I'm really hoping we can just spend the next hour just talking content.
Yeah. And I'm Louis, sorry, from College Software. I forgot to mention that. So, I think the topic from your blog post, Bill, you went through what makes a good story, how do you make the time, what places to use, curation versus creation, understanding your audience, distributing the content, connecting with storytellers, blogs and blogging. Where would you like to start?
Well, I think Andy's a good one to start on, and really just look at what everyone thinks makes a good story.
Well, everyone's story is different to everyone else's. I think I just want to start by telling you a story from my perspective, which is, I guess, the early stages, Bill, when Sarah's just walked into the background.
Hi, Sarah.
She's walked out. Is what happened where I learned the power. I mean, I've been blogging for 6 years, and the power of the story was when I did the bungee jump 3 years ago now. We did the bungee jump off, dressed up as we had a character as a crocodile, as the Croc Man, and we told the story over several months as we journeyed across to Switzerland and ended up, Bethany and myself, jumping off the Versace Dam on the end of a 900-foot rope. And it really drove home to me the power of storytelling, because social just embraced it, whether it was the blog, whether it was Twitter, whether it was Facebook, and helped us raise a lot of money. But it was just the interest factor, because it was a real story. And I think that's the challenge that recruiters have, is differentiating real stories that are interesting between fake stories that are just, people can see right through them. And then that's a real challenge.
Yeah, I think one of the things I think, Andy, and I'll be interested in your views on this, and you, Louis, as a sometime contributor and very much a reader of content, is that one of the challenges is actually understanding what's actually interesting to audience, because quite often to people their day to day is and the things they come across every day seems quite mundane and boring and ordinary, when actually to the outside audience it's really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it comes back to something more, for me, more basic about this whole thing is actually half the time they don't understand who their audience is.
Yeah.
So before we think about content and what content is good, we don't actually know. A lot of them don't know who they're trying to reach out to in the first place, and that's a real challenge for recruiters, strangely enough, who theoretically should know their marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. I remember from your point of view, Andy, and from my point of view, when we had the dissection, that we really learned that lesson, that we were perhaps writing content for the wrong audience. I remember when I had people ringing me and contacting me and saying, "Oh, who can you recommend? Who's a good consultant in social recruiting?" I was kind of saying, "Well, have you thought about me?" And they said, "Oh, we didn't think you did that, because that's not what you talk about. We thought you were a recruiter, or we thought you were something different." And I know and I remember you writing about it a few times, that you need to get really focused on who your audience is, and are you actually writing content for them?
Yeah, I agree, and that's exactly right. And I think we've both gone through transitions, and you do every so often when you revisit your own content. And we've only got to look back at the content we've written and realise you start questioning yourself and think, who was actually reading that?
Yeah, I mean, I write stuff and read it and think I wouldn't actually read that. So I don't know how I'd expect anyone else to read that. That's a common thing. Same time, I get the surprise where I've written stuff which I've thought was going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and or the Nobel Prize for Literature, I should say, probably, and nothing has happened. No comments, no reaction, no retweets, nothing. And then I've written stuff which I thought was a filler because I've got a bit of time, and just chucked it out there, and it's gone wild, and people have come back and said, that's the best thing you've ever written.
Well, I think I'd agree with that, Bill, because I read a post the other day, ironically, about that exactly. And they said that the good, meaningful, long posts, the 600-word plus posts that we both get stuck into sometimes, are the ones that people love to read and digest, but the ones that get shared the most are posts less than 300 words. So I think there's a difference. The quick, do it on the train, quick bullet point numbers, whatever you want to call it, that gets shared around, which is the ones where get your big spikes on on our analytics. But actually, the ones that we enjoy reading and probably writing as well are the more meaningful topics that can add some real value.
Yeah, and quick stuff that's easy for people to consume. And I think the other thing is, if you're trying to build a bit of engagement around your content, you've got to leave a bit for people to comment. I think sometimes, I know certainly from my point of view, I've made, and I've had this conversation with Louis Welcomme before, where I think one of the beauties of her blog is there's space to comment and invitation to react and add a bit more information and add a bit more of the story or a bit more of a take. I think sometimes I'm guilty of writing the whole, trying to put everything,
giving all the answers.
Yeah, give all the answers, and there's no room. There's no room for anything else. That's on the basis that the readers are still there at the end, that they haven't got bored around about 1,500 words.
But the other thing as well I'd add is that we're talking about content. We're all just talking about blogs at the moment, but content is we're on Google Plus now today. We've got content for Twitter, we've got content for Facebook, we've got content for Pinterest, Instagram, and you name it. All these other ones coming out there, and for me, this is starting to get a bit more technical, and you need a much better understanding. We're not just talking about an audience per se. We're talking about what's your audience on Facebook, what dynamic and what's their makeup on Facebook. The people on Twitter will be different to Facebook. The people on Google Plus will be different. The people on LinkedIn will be different again. And so you could argue, actually, we've got a bigger problem because we need to be thinking about content strategies and different content for different audiences on different channels. And then we have a whole, it makes a recruit, someone who's trying to get into it for the first time, it makes it very, very complex.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, the advice I'd always give people is you can read and think and scratch your chin as much as you like. You actually just have to get out and do it and figure it out. And I think we've done that. And I think we're constantly reinventing and working out, well, actually, that works really well on LinkedIn. And extended posts now on LinkedIn are becoming blogs. So that works really well on my LinkedIn audience. This actually is something I'll share with groups. This is something I won't. This is content. This is an update that's going to work well for me on Facebook, and it's just constant. And you have to just go and do it and see what happens. Sometimes it's just the day, things that work really well in certain channels on a particular day because of something that's happened. You post it the day after, and it will get you absolutely nothing back. And you really need to feel your way around and figure out what works.
You need to keep an eye on your statistics and analyse everything and repeat what does work, I guess.
But as Bill said, though, Louis, that's where the problem comes in, because I guess Facebook is probably a good example because it's the one that people are striving to, and they can see the analytics very, very quickly, is that, you know, one thing that's flavour of the month, literally at 10 o'clock in the morning, because of the audience, you know, it's going to be a Western, you know, it's going to be a UK, European audience. Do that again at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon for the American audience, completely different results. So do you work on the spike for UK and Europe, or do you work on the US spike or the Asian spike? So you have to, as Bill said, you just got to keep on trying and testing and without repeating yourself continuously with the same content, because that just looks crap on a page anyway.
Yeah, and find a voice. You know, find a voice. I think the biggest thing is people have got to feel like you got to feel like you're speaking to them. If I want the brochure, I'll get the brochure, or I'll go to the static website, and that doesn't matter where it is. I think what you want to feel is you want to feel personality. It is social media, therefore it is social, and you want to feel the personality, and you want to feel that. I would hope from the content that we generate, if somebody met Andy or someone met me, without getting into the qualities of stuff, they would expect to meet different types of people. They would have a feel for who we're going to be when they meet us, and hopefully they're not disappointed to that voice.
Yeah, I think we're pretty. I mean, as two bloggers in the same space, we are completely different. I think you could probably tell from if you read 3 or 4 posts of ours each, a good feel for the characters we are, and we're fairly true. I think Louis, a good example in the middle here. I think we're fairly true to what we are, because
you're both quite honest. Yes, you're both quite honest and blunt with how you write. So actually, that brings up. I mean, when you're talking about recruitment agencies, are we talking about individuals that manage these blogs and create a brand around themselves, or are we talking about the company brand? How do you tell that story?
Well, if you went to a business, there's let's just say it's a small agency listening in, and they've got 5 recruiters. They've got 5 voices. They've got 5 people who, if you met those 5 individuals, would tell stories or do things or have do things in very different ways. And if you can find an outlet for those 5 voices, that's what people want. You know, I can remember running agencies. We used to know fairly quickly, once we started connecting or meeting or speaking to certain clients, we'd regularly swap clients and candidates around, because I'd say, you know what, if Andy and I and you, Louis, and Robin were in the same office, I'd go, you know what, this is a good one for you, Andy. This guy will like you. He'll like what you're about, and he's really not going to like me. And at the same token, I'll get someone else and say, this is your client or your candidate, and this is yours, Robin. And we'd just start to know who would fit with who in terms of personality and take. And content's exactly the same. So if you could unify all that and say, show us your personality and show us who you are, establish a bit of personal brand within corporate brand, you know, make it's corporate, not corporation. I view it when you're running social on behalf of a company, you know the limits of what you can do and say and what you can't. But equally, find a place where everybody has a voice and you can show it.
Yeah.
So do you think? Sorry, Andy. Go on.
I was going to say I would just add to that with a little difference, is to say I think that when you have a company, recruitment companies and businesses, you know, recruiters aren't shrinking violets. most of the time. And I think that they'd be more than happy. Now that the challenge, I think, is how are you going to get them to provide content? It doesn't have to be written anymore. It can be audio, it can be a podcast, it can be video. Sometimes that's easier for them to do it. And as long as, I think everyone should get involved, in a company that shows more people contributing, I think, is a more powerful overall brand. And also the candidates, for me, they want to see what the individual consultants talk about. They want to get to know them. They want to see who they're dealing with.
Yeah, they want to choose. They want to choose. They want to have enough there to be able to choose who they want to talk to. It's a very, very crowded marketplace. It's a very boring marketplace when all you're doing is looking at jobs and saying, right, this is it. Yeah, and I think candidates and clients, increasingly clients, are looking to be able to feel, right, what's the first thing you do? You don't Google people anymore. You start off and you go and have a look at their LinkedIn profile. You see what that's about. Where does that lead? You'll go and have a look at, if they're on Twitter, you might go and have a look at their Twitter feed. You'll Google them and see maybe there's a corporate blog and content. You're going to start looking at this stuff, and you want to get a feel for business. At the end of the day, if you look at it, you break it down into four things when you're looking for a supplier of something. The first thing is capability. Are they able to do they have the capability to deliver? The second one is dependability. Do I believe in them? Do I believe in what they're talking about? The third one is going to be value. Are they priced about right? Is the price right in the market? And most agencies are pretty there or thereabouts on that. The fourth and most important one is, who do I actually want to deal with? Who do I feel like I trust and I have a feeling for? And when they actually have a look at that feeling of value, that feeling of value really comes from that feeling of personal, comes from being able to feel the person, and that's what content gives you. Recruiters are brilliant at this stuff because as a recruiter, and I still consider myself a recruiter, we know a little bit about everything and a lot of bit about nothing. So we have a million stories. We're constantly talking to candidates or companies or looking at different things that are going on to be able to accumulate a million stories in a day all the time, and sometimes it's a snippet I want to pass on, something I pick up that I want to stick on Facebook or LinkedIn, make it a LinkedIn update, stick it out on, tweet it, or other times it's more expansive, I want to put it in a blog.
Yeah, and I think the challenge comes, Bill, I totally agree with that, but I think that the challenge comes is then the agencies themselves. It's not the consultants. They don't trust. I don't think they trust social media yet anyway. I think we both agree on that. But they don't trust social media enough. Then they don't trust or empower their employees, and this isn't just about recruiters, to trust them to put out stuff that may be a bit off kilter, it might be a bit off piste, but it's still giving their character, it's still giving their personality, it's still giving people what they are about, and that's them as a person. As you say, whether it's a 2-word tweet or a Facebook update, or whether it's a longer blog, a video, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's starting to show the character, the personality, and a little bit about the agency, really, because they've employed them.
Exactly right. I think if you look at it in the way that people work, once you've met someone and once you start building a relationship, so the first time you get a client, it's very formal. There's a bit of dancing around the houses to find out who they are. The first time you meet a candidate, it's very formal. But the more times that you speak to them, the more conversations you have. You pick the phone up. Very rarely are those conversations ever about the topic of work, apart from the essential bit of information. So, if you talk to someone for 10 minutes, 8 minutes of that conversation is going to revolve around social, X Factor, football, what's happening with your team. I know you're a Liverpool fan. I might make a comment about that, whatever it is. And there's only going to be a small bit of it, which is going to be business. And if the only thing we talked about was business, you're going to think I'm pretty boring and not someone you actually want to work with and look forward to talking to. I think the problem is once we go online, people they forget about that actually you as a recruiter are talking to candidates, clients, and potential people who you've got to know over time, that there's going to be a huge social element in that, and actually that's not a waste of time.
But this is, I wrote the post this week about exactly this. It's like, don't do social, You know, don't just do the mechanics and process it and just churn something out. Be social. And that's what we're talking about here. And that's the power of social media. It allows you to be social. And that's where recruitment agencies, I think, I can't comment for the US because I don't know, but certainly in the UK, they're still very staid, they're still very traditional, they're still very, they're not willing to let that bit go and be properly social. They're still
there's still a fear that anything you put online has to be a brochure. You know, it has to be marketing rules of this is what you know. It's people like Louis, it's the marketing guys who are killing everything. In setting these rules of this is what you have to do.
It's a bit harsh, Bill. Louis is he's one of the good guys on that front.
Yeah.
Well, I actually can finally contribute something here.
Oh,
Thank you, Robin.
I know. I even had to unmute my microphone. A friend of mine owns an agency here in Louisiana, and she is still hesitant to put the pictures of her recruiters on her website. She doesn't even want to necessarily move it even to that level. And if you go to her website, she doesn't even have the name of the recruiters on their website. It's just sort of a general contact us sort of presence. And they've really not differentiated themselves in any way. So they are nowhere near ready letting the personality of their staff.
And why is that, Robin? What's the reason why they are doing that? Is it fear of headhunters or?
No, I don't think so. I think it's fear of doing something that's not, circa 1992. They recently started an email newsletter, which was very out of the box for them, and that's really as far as they've gone. And when I've talked to her about it and suggested that she's got some very strong core of recruiters, and they do sort of differentiate themselves in the market for the types of positions that they staff, but she's hesitant to kind of put herself out there as her agency having a different focus than everybody else in town. And I don't really get it, because as an HR practitioner who may use her, that's what I want to see. I want to see what makes her agency different than the one 2 miles away and that sort of thing. And I'm not quite sure where the hesitancy comes from, other than nobody else is doing it and we're afraid to be the first one.
Yeah, I think over here I've heard similar arguments, but the argument is very, very simple from the recruitment agency owner. I do not want to give any more ammunition to headhunters to headhunt my staff.
Yeah.
It's complete rubbish, because at the end of the day, they're all on LinkedIn. You've only got to pick the phone up. So either or, you're going to find them. So I find that very strange.
Yeah, if you're worried about losing your recruiters from as simple as a phone call, then you probably have a different problem in your business.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that. The problem is never. It's the same thing as if people post irresponsible stuff. If people are posting irresponsible stuff online, you have a different problem in your business, because you've got people who feel that way or feel that they can do things. And I think that we have a few things. One is fear, that people fear that everything has to be perfect.
Yes.
They have this fear that we'll get it wrong. We don't really. And Robin, we do our he said, she said talks, and we need to do a post about that. That it really does get that there is this, okay, I accept and recognise the potential of it, and this is the conversation that I have with recruiters, is we can see the potential, the power, the reach, the cost. We get all those bits. We get the benefit. A, we don't know how to do it, and B, we have this fear, this big fear that paralyses us from doing anything, that maybe we're going to do it wrong or look stupid in what we're doing, that we're going to put bad content out there and fall apart.
How do you think recruitment owners agency owners should deal with this? And should they let their recruiters free to do whatever they want? Should they be putting aside an hour a day for content creation and social engagement? I mean, I think at the end of the day, recruiters, like anyone else, get judged by outcomes. So when I managed and ran and owned agencies,
you know, yeah, we had lots of direction in terms of, right, this is the number of calls we want you to make, these are the minimum standards and everything else. At the end of the day, you could pick up the phone 100 times. If you didn't make any money over a period of time, you got fired. And I think that's what what they need to do is loosen up on the inputs and actually work on the outputs. You know, work on who's making placements, who's doing business, and however you want to do that, provided it's legal and it's ethical, do it. You know, get out and do it. And if you want to sit on LinkedIn all day and you can make your placements and make your money, then you go and do that. And if you want to spend 3 hours doing a blog post and that generates you good candidate, CPL in Ireland is a good example. They were able to track back directly three £20,000, €20,000 fees in quite a high-end market to 2 blog posts. To 2 blog posts. So suddenly now everybody blogs in CPL. Right? Everybody has a blog because they were able to say we wouldn't have generated. In one case, it was we got this client because of this blog post. In another, it was because the client directly came back to them and said, "I've just Googled. I'm looking for one of these. You've written something about this. Can I work with you?" And in the others, they were able to associate their candidates. So I think what you do is you just find you actually have a bit of trust, which is the big thing that lacks in the UK recruitment market. Have a bit of trust and say, you know what, at the end of the day, you know what you have to do. You do it in the way that you feel you can do it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that I was with a company, a couple of companies over the last couple of weeks, and one is taking the approach that they are going to be more flexible, the other is not, all around KPIs.
Yeah.
The point where, and that's the killer. You know, it's around. Yes, the bottom line is it's the owners have probably come up through the ranks of being big billers. Maybe 5-10 years ago, they have always done things the same way. They've always picked the phone up. They've always banged it. They've always whipped people to make more calls, more time on the calls, etc., and all the KPIs that you could have. And they're working on the basis, well, it worked for me, it can work for you, and they're still not willing to relax the way that they are now adopting business and looking to social, looking to different recruitment practices to do their job. They're not.
And it's not the 90s anymore.
No, it isn't. And they're not empowering or trusting their employees to do it. As you say, I'm very much your target is X placements a month. I don't care how you get them, as long as you do it properly and you want to blog, you want to go on LinkedIn, you want to go out to networking events. It doesn't really matter as long as you deliver.
Or you want to sit on the phone all day. You want to sit on the phone all day and do that.
Exactly.
You do it, and we'll support you.
Should companies be providing then training from this perspective?
I think it's guideline. It's guideline and support, really. I think there's a few things. One is training and make training available to people, guidelines and resources. Set up simple resources. There's people like Andy and I, lots of other people, giving stuff away all the time. Start sharing some of that about among recruiters and saying, have a look at this and have a look at that. And people who come along and say, you know what, I want to develop my... Andy's got some content workshops coming up. I want to develop my content skills, therefore I want to go on this. I want to go and do that. Just be a little bit receptive to all the things that are happening. It always amazes me that whenever we run through London, and we've got another one coming up in March, how many of the recruiters have to actually take a day off to go and pay, because it's not seen as, going and speaking to people is not going to be your development. Going and sitting with people. So we have a very old-fashioned traditional view of what you need to do with training. People can learn from webinars, from all kinds of things. There's a ton of stuff out there to go and learn. Make sure the support's available. But if I work in a market, just say I work in a market and I work in electronic engineering, and I want to come in the morning and I want to check my electronic engineering Facebook, my LinkedIn group, and reply to a few contacts. I'm going to go through my Google Plus, see if anything came up in my Hangout. I'm going to read a bit of news. I'm going to see in my reader that there's 3 or 4 blogs from people that I know, and I want to read that. I need the freedom to be able to do that as my development and as my learning. And I think that's missing. It's kind of like what people recognise as being activity and not activity. It is not changing, while the way in which we're learning it is, and the way in which we're keeping current is.
And that really gets back to what Andy was saying of the old folks. I don't care what field you're in, see the way they did something as more valuable than how people are finding information and working on a daily basis.
Yeah, but we're old folks, Robin. You know, Louis might be a bit younger.
I don't want to say that.
We work for ourselves, I guess, is the difference. So.
That's right. But I wrote a post the other day. A friend of mine was talking to a millennial, and I hate gender, categorizations, but it's true. And she mentioned to him that she went into a meeting at her organization with her iPad to take notes, and her boss told her she couldn't do that. She couldn't use the iPad to take notes because he didn't really understand it, and she had to explain to him, this is why I'm taking notes on here. I save it in the notepad. I send it to myself. It's stored in the cloud. This is how I work efficiently. And she had to go through a whole explanation for him to understand why that was more appropriate than a pad of paper. And I see folks around my office that will sit for an hour in the morning reading the morning newspaper while I'm looking at content online. They probably think I'm wasting my time because they don't understand it.
Well, they check the stock prices and all the rest of it.
That's right.
And at the same time of glancing through it, also pick up a bit of social and celebrity gossip. But it's in the newspaper, so it's okay. It's in a journal. It's in a journal. It's a journal thing.
Can I just come back to what Louis' question? Just you asked Louis a minute ago around about recruitment agencies and how they do it. I think that, just picking up on what you said, Bill, from my perspective, I think there's one thing first. The first thing is the acceptance and empowerment. A recruitment agency owner, directors, managers, whatever it is, they've got to accept the fact that change is happening, and they've got to empower their employees. That's the first problem, and that's probably one of the biggest hurdles to overcome. Then they've got to, either through themselves, through the myriad of people out there that are offering different services around social, is then to start to help them understand some objectives and what they want to achieve from what they're going to do, rather than do it blindly. Give them the tools, show them the tools they can use, and they do need training. They do need coaching and help and ongoing training. It's not a question of doing a session and coming out and they're experts. Yeah, there is an element of get on there and try it, and you might get do the 80% rule, Bill, which is what you were talking about earlier, because it won't be perfect first time. But it's very much a question of they need their hand-holding, they need coaching, and they need more support than anything else, because I think they need to know if they put a post out there or a tweet or a Facebook update that then doesn't get any response at all. As we all know from being blogging, you write blogs, as you said earlier, you get no response, and after 3 or 4 you start to question your own sanity and ability.
Yeah. But people are reading it. This is the thing that always says people are reading it. You look at the numbers and you go, actually,
they may not comment, but they read them.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important part, and I've learned over the last 6 to 12 months that it's no good just going into a company, giving them training, and then spending a couple of days walking out. It's a 6-month project to help them understand. It's a culture. We're talking about cultural change.
It is a culture. Content is a culture.
That's the biggest issue.
Content is a culture. I've just been working on on an ebook about what is social recruiting, and my conclusion to that is that it's actually a culture rather than a thing. It's a way that you think. You just think content. You just and we've got like this now, Andy, over years, that we're constantly seeing content in front of us. So you're thinking, right, I need to post whatever it is. You're thinking, right, I'll put that on Facebook, I'll put that on Twitter, I'll put that on LinkedIn, I'll write a blog post about that. And it's that constant, when we're talking about storytelling, it's constantly seeing things as a series of stories and putting them in the right place. And that's a culture. That's something that evolves.
Yeah, and that takes a time to integrate into someone's mindset, which is not something you can. We can sit there and get them to set up a Google Reader and go and follow 150 blogs and content coming. We do that every day because we've been doing it for 5-6 years. But to try and get them to do it, and then to get into a habit of looking at that data or that content and understanding, as you just said, which is the best platform then to share it or to add comment on or to do things with, that then becomes that's something that really is where I think recruiters are one step behind the marketeers.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I think it's one step behind the marketeers of thinking of content and what you share. It's not all about readers. It's not all about fans. It's not about followers. It's the right people following you and the right people interacting with you, and the right people doing the right things. You know, easy to say, but I'd rather have 50 people read a blog post who are potentially customers, candidates, or people who might share my content than 5,000 who will probably never do anything or have any circle of influence over what I'm doing. Louis, I want to go back to a couple of points of something you asked. I think the other thing in terms of recruitment companies and owners is we have two issues. One is the ownership of data, in that a big issue is that agencies, and I've been exactly the same, we've always been able to own data because it was on paper. You wrote it, I put it, and then I put it on a database which was on a server. I was able to own it. Now we've got this whole social world of connections. It's kind of, well, okay, you work for me, you're making these LinkedIn connections. What happens when you leave? Who owns that? So actually nobody can own LinkedIn data apart from LinkedIn. So that's one thing, is fear. It's the fear of the fear of the security of the data, because recruitment businesses have always been valued on the data they own. I've got one message for recruitment agency owners: get over it. Get over it. You know, you can't own stuff anymore. You can't own it anymore. You just got to make sure that you've got multiple relationships with contacts. You manage things the right way, and you've got an ongoing pipeline of people being generated. I think the other thing is the other big thing I've seen where agencies have wanted to adopt this. I've been quite open to adopting social media and social recruiting, is the personal branding sometimes of recruiters ends up threatening the agencies, where the owners or directors of the business actually start to get threatened that an individual in the business appears to the outside world to be bigger than the business. And we can think of lots of examples of that, of people who blog and generally in their own time have become bigger than the business. And businesses really fear that.
Which is silly, because ultimately I think that benefits the business.
Yeah, but they're scared of people becoming more famous than the business.
Well,
But we're going back full circle to how we started. And Robin, you were talking about that example of, you know, the agency where you want them to have character, you want them to have personality. That's coming out through a blog, through videos, whatever it may be. And actually, that's going to be a business winner for the company because of their personality, because they've stepped off the edge of the plate and are doing that instead of some shrinking violet, consultant that is not known to anybody.
Most agencies are scared because they were built on stolen business, right? You know, they were built on someone leaving a company and moving a desk and setting it up for themselves or doing elsewhere. So they have this fear that we want you to network with everyone, but we want to own that network. Now, that actually wasn't any different going back 10, 15 years, except the fact that your network was made up of you ringing people up and writing them in a Rolodex. We never wanted you to but your Rolodex was private and I could lock it in a drawer when you left. Now I can't do that. So you get a real fear that I think people just have to get over. When Andy was mentioning the cloud, it makes me laugh, because whenever I'm talking to a recruitment business in the cloud, they always look at the sky. It's always that conversation of, right, okay, even more fear is that I can't have all my data in a box in front of me. Can't own it anymore. It's very portable. You have to get over it and worry about what people are doing when they work for you, not what they're going to do when they go.
But and the great thing we talk about content, and this makes me laugh when agencies say that to me and owners, because at the same time they'll criticise and they'll moan that that recruiters can't access the stuff because of firewalls and their online protection, they still, when you explain the cloud and then people go across to things like Bullhorn and other recruitment software like yours, Louis, and they can access it from an iPad, an iPhone, from home, just by jumping in. Suddenly, it's a whole different ball game. So
you can recruit anyway.
The argument the other way around. You can't, and they're sitting back in the 1970s, quite frankly. And the quicker most of them decide to leave the industry, it'll be a better place.
And dressing like it as well, generally.
Well, there is that.
and dressing like it. And I think it's actually getting to that and saying, well, okay, we can't own data. We need to look at things like hours of work because of mobile. We need to look at what we're doing. We need to be open and trusting of things like remote working because technology makes it easier. But there's a whole host of stuff which is really probably another show for next time. But I think the big thing in terms of content is trust people to tell stories and trust them to tell them well, and accept that they're going to tell them in different styles, accept that they're going to find their own voice. They're going to make mistakes from time to time. They're not going to be malicious mistakes. So just let people get on and do that.
Yeah, I think that I would say that since the change is happening. I would say the change is happening a lot quicker than maybe some people want it to happen. If you go back to 2011, and some of the presentations Bill, you and I were delivering to recruitment agencies, it was still very much, you have to change. They're sitting there with their arms crossed, not listening, not believing you. And the presentation I did for Louise's at UK Recruiter before Christmas, which was the start of the whole content piece for workshops from my perspective, is when I delivered the presentation and we talked about why recruitment companies are going to fail, why they're not listening, why they're not, how they can use content as a powerful tool for reducing cost, job board cost, for improving their brand, for getting people to pick, get the companies to phone them, get inbound calls rather than have to make outbound calls. And suddenly the penny started dropping and the audience were receptive, and that's where the idea for these workshops came from, purely because after I did the presentation, the recruiters they didn't know what to do and where to go and how to start with the whole content piece. So hence we're going to do some in February and March to just try and help them through the process of saying, right, you're a recruiter, this is actually what it means, and this is how the power of content can help your business, and give them baby steps to take them through that process. Because I genuinely don't think that they're recruiters, they're not marketeers, and Louis, you're probably a better person to ask on this one. They are there to find and place people. They're not necessarily understanding what marketing really is, whether it's their own brand, whether it's their companies, or even whether it's the candidates they're placing.
But they're there to make relationships. In my view, that's the point.
That depends on the sector, Bill.
I think whatever sector it is, I've got to say, I don't really care what the sector is. The whole way that I see the market going is we're moving entirely away from transactional recruiting, that people want to do business with people that they know or know of, that people want to work with, that candidates want more than an introductory CV service. Clients want more than CVs being sent to them.
Totally,
they want relationships, and they want relationships which are built on multiple levels and not just about jobs and work. Not just like any relationship, there's a lot of aspects to it, and I think
sometimes they are still going to be very transactional. And then I don't know if this matters or not, but a large organization that contracts with an agency, and that's the only agency that can be used, and so the hiring manager doesn't necessarily have any say in the matter. This is the recruiter you're working with. This relationship doesn't matter. It does become transactional. It does become, just send me those CVs that are potential viable candidates. Does that matter then? Does that hiring manager care that that recruiter or that agency has a brand, has a personality? I don't know.
I think the relationship bit comes into that, because I can tell you that in those in those organisations where you have a PSL, you have a very tight contract where there's only one supplier. Exactly the same as being a corporate recruiter, Robin. when you're a corporate recruiter, there's hiring managers you work with and work for, and there's hiring managers you send CVs to, right?
True.
And the people you work with tend to be those people who've given you a little bit more time, a bit more information, a bit more respect in the process, will not just talk to you about that you're getting it wrong, but come back and say, look, Robin, you haven't sent me the right people because of X, Y, and Z. That's relationship recruiting.
True.
It might be in a transactional environment, and those people who build those barriers and that distance, who basically just get CVs and send them back to you and say no, they get the postbox service. They get the yeah, I'm doing what you asked me to do. Here's some CVs. And I think from the client point of view, but equally from a candidate point of view, a big point for me is what I'm seeing is the length of hiring time has doubled. The number of steps involved has doubled. The number of declines now, I used to work in agencies where we ran on about 5% decline rate. So about 5% of the candidates who got offered a job declined. The average decline rate runs at about 50% now. People who go through a long process, but uncertainty about the economy, whatever it is. So what they're looking for from their recruiters is a relationship of trust and good advice. Now, if the only conversation I've had with you, Robin, sending you out for an interview is you've got an interview at 3 o'clock, please wear a suit. I'll email you the job spec and you read that. When it comes down, you're not going to turn around to me and say, should I really take this job? Is this the right move for me? You're going to make your own mind up about that. I'm going to lose any influence in that relationship because we have no trust.
Bill, this is with Robin's right to a certain degree. We're talking about I think it's two different things. I think we're going to have. Well, I'm seeing it now. We've got the RPOs, we've got the transactional companies. We have that now. That's not going to change because of cost. We talk about how recruiters can differentiate themselves. The specialists, the niche providers. They're the experts. They're the relationship builders. They're the knowledge experts and the people that are going to have those relationships with candidates.
Yeah, but even in an RPO, you need the relationship.
I'm not denying the relationship. All I'm saying is that the cost or the value of the transaction makes it a needing to be transaction process. They might have a relationship, but they need to bang CVs out because they've got lots of requirements.
Yeah, there's a volume requirement, but there's people you'll work with, and then again, from the candidate point of view, if you want to generate referrals, you've got to have relationships, and that's the big thing. I'm working with some referral technology companies at the moment, and same thing again. It comes back to if people know you and they trust you, they're going to want to work with you. They're going to be receptive to you. They're going to want to help you. If you don't have any relationship, as soon as you send them an email about a job, it goes in the spam box. So that relationship and presence and awareness in everything we're doing, we want to do everything from people we know or people we trust, right? Whatever it is. Recruiting is no different. And recruiting is the biggest decision we've got to make. We want as many voices and relationships in that as possible.
Yeah, I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying that I think we're living in a different, the recruitment industry, we're seeing quite a large amount of change. So we have, we are getting more companies that are getting more requirements because they've got exclusive PSLs or RPOs, whatever it wants to be. The lower end, what I call the lower end, because they're typically the smaller companies, they're the experts in relationships. They're the ones that are the specialists, the niche, as I said earlier. And I think they're the ones that add real value to the equation. They're the ones that, if they get control of the candidates, they can decide sometimes whether the candidate is going to make that 50% or they're going to be the 50% dropout.
And reputation from content, back to the storytelling bit. If you do...
Well, that's because they feel they know you and they know they can trust you. So it comes back to if you're consistently giving out good content, good information, and they can see that, they trust that you know what you're talking about.
There's more to talk about as well if you're in a niche. It's easier, is it not?
If you're fishing in a small pond, all the fish have names. They all have faces. When you're concentrating on that area, but equally, I think when you're trying to build up that reputation in a niche, if you can start to become the authority and the voice through your content on that niche, and able to express opinions about a lot more than here's a job, have a look at it. When you're able to talk about what's actually happening in that market from the stories you're hearing every day and be giving valid advice. That's the people that's the people who people are going to turn to when they want to hire or they want to do somebody. And that equally, I think what's going to happen is the bulk recruitment that we're talking about, Andy, it's going to be increasingly be going in-house for numerous reasons. Not enough time to get into that now. It's the niches who are going to thrive, and when it's a niche, people don't hire in that market very often. They might just need to do it 3 or 4 times a year. That's why they're going out to an agency, and they want to be able to go back and say, right, who knows anyone? We haven't got the established relationship yet. Let's go and have a look at what they're about. Let's go and have a look at their content. That's where people are going to be successful, by taking a content-led strategy.
And where that content can become helpful for a recruiter in a niche area is to demonstrate their understanding of that, because I recently heard a story of an IT recruiter who needed to find some very, very specific talent and had zero understanding of what she was even looking for. And, finding, if there was a recruiter who put that content out there and branded themselves as truly an expert in that very specific field, they could be found, and that's who, as a hiring company, I would want to tap into, not Sally Sue, who just says she can do it and can't.
It's proof, in a way. You're proving your skills and your expertise. So
yeah, and it's vindication.
constantly.
It's what people are saying. If the right people are saying, they like your content, they're liking things, they're sharing stuff about, that's vindication as well.
Mm. Okay. Are we there? We're nearly done now. Any final thoughts then?
Probably go to Andy first, because it's his first hangout. I'm sure not his last.
It's my first hangout too.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Robin. That's a thought.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday for yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I think from my point of view, this is a great example of content that can be used, and not just from a content point of view to publish, but also internally as a tool within their own teams. So I guess we've all learned that actually it's a great way, and Skype is exactly the same. We can do it both ways. But for me, it's all about empower. The recruitment business is, if we're just talking about recruiters, empowerment, understanding, and actually learning what the power of the whole social piece and content is. That's the most important part, because without that, the rest is not going to happen. And I think a lot of the challenge that you and I, Bill, will have over the next 12 months still will be trying to encourage owners to say things need to be done differently. You can't keep doing them the way they were done 3, 4, 5 years ago.
3 or 4 months ago. It can't go 3 or 4 months ago, 3 or 4 days ago sometimes.
And I would just add on the other side of the fence as well, Robin, just to involve you as well. I would say HR departments are as much to blame for that as well.
Absolutely.
They do the same thing, and just because they did it last year that way, a lot of them are still adverse to change, and that's also a problem.
Yes, I agree 100%. Not on my watch, of course, but
Of course.
Not in the lottery, and never in Louisiana. They're very modern and forward-thinking people.
that's right.
I think from my point of view, picking up on Andy's point, we're a nation of Neros. So what I mean by that is we're a nation of people who for too long have been putting our hand up and saying, we've always done it this way. If we pretend it's not happening, it won't. I'd just say go have a look at HMV this week and the music industry and all kinds of other things, and never think that any industry is too big. Take small steps, small strides, but content isn't king, but found content is, and good content is. So go create some stuff and tell some stories.
Robin, do you have any final thoughts?
I just, Andy took the words right out of my mouth, because it's really not something seen in any one industry. I think it's across the board in all sorts of organizations, and there are gatekeepers, and HR unfortunately is often seen as sort of the roadblock. And I think from my angle, one of our roles is to drive out that fear and help managers or owners or whoever it may be
But that's changing as well, Robin.
Exactly.
It's not the old lady in personnel anymore.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of recruiters still view it as, even the perception of what HR is very much personnel thought. Oh, they won't do that. We need to avoid them. We need to get around them.
Absolutely.
Missing that whole layer of influence that can happen. That there's a whole sea of change needs to come.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you all for coming along to this. Do you want to give out your Twitter feeds if anyone wants to follow you?
And tell us about your workshops, Andy. Now's your 2-minute commercial.
My 2-minute plug. Well,
yeah, why not?
and guys, I actually need to hop off because I have a conference call for Louisiana SHRM. So, Bill, you can pump up Louisiana SHRM when I hang up.
I will do.
Okay, bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye,
Bye, Robin. Yeah, basically the workshops are we're running a couple, one in February and one in March. They are focused purely on recruitment, so it's about social media content for recruiters, how to develop and how to build to create this inbound recruitment marketing. So you can find all the details on my blog, which is says.com, or on my Twitter handle at Andy Hedworth. You'll find all my details one way or another, or if you just Google me, you'll find plenty of stuff on me.
It's all there. Bill at Bill Boorman, right?
At Bill Boorman, True London coming up on March the 6th and 7th, so keep an eye out for that. And you can find me on the Recruiting blog and also on the Colleague blog once a week. And we've got a white paper coming out which covers a lot of the topics we've been talking about, a Colleague white paper. So keep your eye out for that as well.
We're hoping to do these every 2 weeks, aren't we? Get different people on different topics in this area, so we'll try and keep to that schedule.
We love it. We'll make it work.
We'll try and work. And we'll get better every time, hopefully, with the technical elements. And I'll be embedding this on the site as well. So
that's brilliant.
And mine's at Colleague RS if people are interested. And just put social agency in, and we'd love to hear your feedback and comments and so forth the next time. Anyway, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Bill.
And message them and tell them why their software is rubbish and what they need to change, because you'll find they're actually listening.
Yes, that's what content's for.
Great stuff. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.